More ag news for your Rural Radio Network. I'm Jesse Harding. Joining us is Karen Ross. She is the Secretary for the Department of Food and Agriculture from California. She's also a Nebraska native, so we want to welcome her back as well. But kind of kicking things off from the LEAD Alumni Conference, you came here to be able to speak to them, and obviously big topic of conversation. Several we're going to be talking about with you today, but obviously the drought is an ongoing issue we've seen. So can you tell us a little bit about the drought issues that are there in California?
Yes, well, it's looking like we may be going into the fourth year of a drought. We had a great December as far as precipitation goes, but we've had no precipitation of any measurable amount in the month of January. So while we hope that the drought will end, we must plan and be prepared for another year, doing conservation, water recycling, and all the other measures that we possibly can.
So talking about that, water being a big issue there, groundwater as well, what are kind of some of the initiatives that you're doing in California with that?
So there's a number of things that happened as a result of the severity of the drought last year. One is that we did pass a water bond so that for the first time in a number of years we have new investment for water storage, both above ground and below ground, in addition to all the other measures that we need. That was created out of a California Water Action Plan that my department co-authored with the Resources Agency and the Environmental Protection Agency. Has 10 very specific areas that we'll be working in. We also last year passed what is now being called hysterical, but really historical groundwater management legislation. While we had some elements of groundwater management legislation, nothing to go far enough to ensure that we have this valuable resource as we face a changing climate and more population. We want to make sure that we're good stewards of those groundwater basins. So this is setting us on a pathway over a 20-year period of time to get our groundwater basins into balance.
Now, being a native of Illinois along the Mississippi River, we talk about nitrogen in the water a lot. Is that also a topic of conversation in California?
So unlike where you come from, where it's nitrates in surface water, our serious issue right now is nitrates in our groundwater. And had the drought not taken a lot of the air away from some of the other issues, we were proceeding in regulatory efforts through our regional water boards on an irrigated ag land program that will really be about how do we stop the movement of nitrates below the root zones and how do we prevent any additional nitrate loading in our groundwater basins. We literally have small rural communities that are not able to drink their water because of the high levels of nitrates.
Talking about after we've got the new governor here and legislation just picked back up as of January 1st in California, you have some new laws around chickens. Can you kind of tell us about that cage-free thing that happened there in California?
So this is actually something that took effect as a result of, in California we really like direct government, which means we really put a lot of propositions onto our ballots. And in 2008, at that time when Prop 2 passed, which prescribed that animals should, if they're going to be confined, must have ample space for, in the case of laying hens, to be able to stand up, turn around, and flap their wings. That passed by the biggest margin we ever had a proposition pass. Almost 70% of the population voted for that. But they gave us 6 years for all of our laying hen facilities to come into compliance. The following year, the legislature passed a law that directed my department to create egg safety rules based on some of the scientific studies that came out of UC Davis as a way of preventing the shedding of salmonella, and not only for enforcement in California, but also to be able to do inspections for the eggs that are coming into California. Unlike fruits and vegetables, where we send the majority to the rest of the country, when it comes to our proteins, and especially eggs, we actually import about 2/3 of the eggs that we consume in California. So it's been a multi-year process. Those laws both took effect on January 1st. We're getting wonderful cooperation from the laying hen industry in California and across the country, despite the fact that 6 states are suing me.
Moving on with that, we're not going to try and make anyone mad here. But with the animal agriculture, you're also working on some antibiotic issues. Can you tell us about that as well?
Sure. Well, we want to be sure that what we're doing aligns with what the U.S. government is doing under an executive order and following up on what Food and Drug has done with a voluntary change in labeling on antibiotics for livestock use. But the governor and the legislature have taken a big interest in this whole issue of antibiotic resistance and really feel that California should spend some time and take some additional steps to do what we can to influence what that outcome is going to be. So we have a fabulous state veterinarian who will be leading that effort with a multiple and very diverse group of stakeholders to try to come to consensus on what makes sense for California to do that aligns with what the federal government's also doing on this issue.
I feel like in California, it's hard to talk about agriculture and not talk about immigration issues as well. Where are things heading, or what does it seem like things are going to happen there?
Well, I think that had it not been for the drought last year, actually the availability of people to help with harvest probably would have been the news story out of California last year, especially in our berry industry along the coast of California. We left a lot of strawberries in the field. We didn't do those second and third pickings. It continues to be a very serious issue for us, and even depending on what happens in Washington with the executive order, that does nothing to help us create a legitimate guest worker program that would continually bring new hands into the field. There's a lot of our crops that we're just not going to be able to mechanize, or certainly not in the near term. And so it's a critical issue. They're the first line of defense when it comes to food safety, of really taking care of those crops in a way that gets them to the consumers in a really high quality and safe manner. And so California is very interested in doing whatever we can to get long-term immigration reform with a guest worker program tailored for the needs of agriculture in California and across the country.
Besides having a lot of issues going on, I'm sure it's also hard to juggle being able to please the consumers as well as the farmers, not only in the state of California, but also in the United States and the world, since it's such a big player in agriculture. Right. How does that happen for you, or maybe your department, kind of looking at everyone and making sure everyone is, for the most part, relatively happy? Well,
yeah, there is such a thing, which I've found in my political role these days. But it's really an exciting time to be engaged in conversations with consumers, because we're seeing this growing interest in where's my food produced, who's producing it. They want that personal connection with farmers and ranchers, and how's it being produced. And while sometimes it feels like accusations, it's really an opportunity to have a conversation and broaden the base of stakeholders who understand what it takes to get the foods of their choice to their table. One of the things that I value in California is our diversity. Right. We have thousands and thousands of very small farmers and young beginning farmers who have, a small operation where they want to be part of the fast-growing organic food industry, and they're only going to sell within 50 miles from home. I really want to make sure that we're protecting those marketing channels, those direct-to-consumer channels, in the same way that my producers who are shipping almonds or dairy products to China, that we're keeping those markets open as well. That's protecting choice for the consumer, which provides farmers more marketing channels. So it's a win-win for us to better understand each other and what people are looking for when they're buying it, because at the end of the day, they make the rules.
In the very beginning, I did mention that you are a native to Nebraska, and you were a part of the LEAD organization here in Nebraska. Yes. How has maybe your roots from Nebraska or being able to go through the LEAD class really helped you in your role now in working in California with all the different aspects?
Especially when it comes to my LEAD experience, I know that I would not be in the position that I've been in, or really have sought out the kinds of opportunities that I was able to do had it not been for my LEAD experience. That understanding of the broader world, the importance of having different perspectives come together, the critical importance of being good communicators and engaging in the public policy arena. All of that experience really, while I was shattered to leave my native state, helped me to embrace the change of moving to California and knowing that the one thing I wanted more than anything was to stay in agriculture, and I've been very, very blessed to be able to do that.
Well, we appreciate you being able to take the time to talk to us today, but also come back to Nebraska. And we look forward to seeing what's going to happen in the future of California agriculture. And then from the LEAD Alumni Conference, being able to talk to Karen Ross, native of Nebraska, and also from the LEAD program as well. She's a secretary for the Department of Food and Agriculture in California. For the Rural Radio Network, I'm Jessie Harding.